strengthening collaborations and driving impact. So just in terms of the agenda for today, so I'll give a sort of brief sort of welcome and introduction to the Dare UK programme, and in particular the Dare UK Community Groups Initiative, which is the sort of strand of work I've been leading on in the Dare UK programme. So I'm Balint Stewart, I'm a programme manager for the Dare UK programme. And then we're going to hear from all of our different community groups. So we've got 8 interest groups now endorsed under the Dare UK banner, a number of which have been funded by the Dare UK programme, either previously or continuously today. And then we've also got some lightning talks from 2 working groups. I'll explain a bit about the distinction between sort of working groups and interest groups. So they're quite, I don't know if, you know, how familiar everybody is with the sort of lightning talk format. They're generally only a couple of slides, really just 3 or 4 minutes for the presentation. We would like to give a little bit of time at the end of each lightning talk for questions from people. So there hopefully will be a couple of minutes of that time for that at the end of each of the community groups presentations. And I'll talk about what the easiest way to sort of ask questions is. Will be, but we would just ask presenters, you know, just please do keep within that time. We've got, you know, lots of different exciting presentations. I want to give everybody the opportunity to be able to present in the next 90 minutes or so. So I hope I don't have to sort of jump in and interrupt, but as a last resort, I will be jumping in to encourage sort of talks to finish up if they're going over time. I won't go through each of the individual community groups right now in terms of the list, but we'll be hearing from each of them, and then we'll just finish with a final call to action to engage. Lots of these community groups are just getting off the ground now, so I think this is sort of quite timely in terms of an event, so that, you know, there are ways that we as the wider community can get involved. Okay, so just a couple of sort of house rules. So yeah, if you could just keep your mics off, except for when you're asking a question, you know, after each of the lightning talks. So do use the raise hand function when asking a question, or you can ask your question via the chat box before or during the at the end of the presentation, and then, you know, we can either catch that in that session for the Q&A for that particular lightning talk, or we can pick it up sort of asynchronously, or members or co-chairs of the community group.
Good calls for this meeting as well.
I'm sure I don't need to have to say this, but yeah, just remain respectful during any discussion and don't interrupt others, or ensure any questions or comments are on topic. And you're encouraged to turn your video on during the Q&A. And this webinar will be being recorded. I don't know if Wesley is on hand to kick that off, but that would be very helpful if we could get this recorded. Okay, so I will just provide a sort of overview and introduction to the Dare UK Community Groups Initiative and the Dare UK programme, for those of you who aren't familiar with the programme. So this is our vision and our mission. So, you know, Dare UK is really at its heart an infrastructure programme, really working for the to benefit the public by supporting research that can seamlessly access diverse kinds of sensitive data. So there's a big opportunity space to make, you know, access to different kinds of sensitive data more efficient, while still maintaining, crucially, the security of the data and privacy protection of individuals within the data. So, you know, leading to these benefits, but also maintaining that we keep sort of security at the heart of it. And the mission is to put the UK at the forefront of sensitive data research and innovation by assembling the tools, technologies and standards needed to streamline secure data linkage and use. We're currently in phase 2 of the programme, so that's sort of £18.2 million investment from UKRI. Phase 1 started in July of 2021, and it was really focused on, you know, dialogue, understanding the needs of the research and infrastructure communities and where the Dare UK programme could add the most value. Phase 2 is build, test and establish, but I think it's really important to say here that we still see that dialogue, that wider community dialogue, as being critical for phase 2, so that we co-design the program with the wider community. So to gain community input and challenge to help inform not just what we're doing in the DARE UK program, but also the kind of the wider sensitive data research ecosystem. And the community group initiative is really a key program of work for phase 2. So it actually started towards the end of phase 1, so spring of 23. We had a funding call at the end of phase 1, and an additional, our first funding call of phase 2 in autumn of last year for community groups. And that's really helped to grow the number of community groups under the DARE UK banner, who we'll be hearing from today. And we will indeed be running additional funding calls later on in phase 2, both for new community groups, but also to top up existing community groups that are working under the DARE UK banner. So what is the sort of DARE UK Community Group Initiative? So it was launched in spring 23, as I mentioned. It's really an open invitation for community groups to form around for topics aligned to the DARE UK vision and objective. So we've very much sort of borrowed from the Research Data Alliance in terms of the structure of these community groups here. They're an open invitation for people to submit proposals that follows the structure of sort of having interest groups and working groups, and where the community groups are defined by a community group charter. So that sets out the kind of purpose of the community and the membership of that community, and there's co-chair leadership. So these have to be individuals from across different organizations that are sort of identifiable and motivated leadership for that community group. So and we ask that those co-chairs are from different organizations, because this is really about partnership working. So how do we sort of join up different organizations to work together for the public benefit? There is a code of conduct that we expect community group members to abide by, and we also insist on open publishing of community group outputs, so that those outputs that the community groups are generating are of benefit to the wider community. So there are 3 different kinds of DARE UK community groups, and they serve different functions. So we have interest groups. So they're really focused on solving a specific problem area in sensitive data research and infrastructure. And they're really open-ended in terms of how long they can run for. And interest groups will often sort of spawn working groups to address particular pieces of work. So this keeps sort of interest groups quite broad-based. And just as an example of an interest group that many of you might be familiar with, which is PEDRI, which is Public Engagement and Data Research Initiative, which is really focused on kind of the broad-based challenge area of how you involve the public effectively in sensitive data research. And then we've got working groups, so they're really focused on producing specific outputs on well-defined problems. So that could be recommendations, it could be some code, it could be a tool that's useful to the broader community. And often, but not always, they will spin off of interest groups. So again, this is just for illustrative purposes that I've chosen PEDRI here, but PEDRI have just got a new working group endorsed, which is the PIE Standards Evaluation and Adoption Working Group, which takes an output of the PEDRI community group and is developing a tool so that organizations can evaluate themselves against that. So it's quite a well-defined output, and we'll hear from that working group a bit more about that particular output. So working groups have really well-defined pieces of work, time limited. And then finally we have communities of practice. So these are really independent of the DARE UK programme, but they're working in very overlapping or adjacent areas that we're really keen to work together in a sort of joined up way with. Okay, so as I mentioned, we started this initiative in 2023. We funded 4 community groups, so 3 interest groups and a working group. We've had another funding call since then as part of phase 2, and endorsed a number of other community groups that have actually been around for a while, like ESTAP and ISDFPN. And so now we're at sort of 10 different community groups that are active under the DARE UK banner, and today is really about hearing from them about their plans and how to get involved with the things that they are doing. So without further ado, we can jump straight into the community group lightning talks. And we're going to start with statistical disclosure control, reducing barriers to outputs from TREs. So, Felix, this is you, I think.
I am, yes, I'm ready to go. Okay, got slides. Okay, so hello everyone. If anyone doesn't know, output checking is about ensuring that research and model building based on confidential data doesn't accidentally leak information about the data subjects. So that's the core element here. It's a central part of the way secure environments work, and increasingly in other areas as well. So SDC Reboot is about identifying, sharing, and developing good practice, both for regular research outputs and machine learning models. And then it's about using that knowledge to maximize the research output while minimizing the risk to data output. So it's all about making sure we get as much research output out as we can while making sure that we've maintained that risk. Why is it here? Because we've seen a lot of changes in the last few years, particularly on the SACRO project, which is funded by DARE, which rethought the theory of traditional models and built a technical solution to allow TREs to do output checking automatically. Plus, there's also the SACRO ML element, which is machine learning, which built on a previous project, Grey Matter, trying to understand how we could manage machine learning models. So there's a lot of new developments in the last couple of years. SDC Reboot was set up last year to try and inform the data community about these developments and to support the community and also co-develop some of these ideas. So this is our second round now. Next slide, please, Valand. Okay, so broad aim is to address the theme of capability and capacity. Sorry, Rand, I forgot about this. You can press a button a couple of times, so it'll all come up. So 3 broad themes. Removing barriers to adoption by researchers and data services, because, for example, particularly the tools we've been developing, some of them are still at early stages, some of them require a change of thinking about things, and some of them are still quite complicated, really. We're not quite sure how to understand them. We're looking at conceptual development and guidelines, so we're still pushing on trying to improving the information that's out there as well about this, because there's a lot of information, but it's changed so much recently. We need to do more work with making that clearer. And we're still looking at doing the risk assessment of machine learning models, and that's really quite an urgent task for a lot of TREs at the moment. So the main activity will be monthly virtual meetings amongst the community, looking to establish priorities. We're going to start with having a couple of back to basics presentations about, what is disclosure control, what do we mean by this, and because that will also help to start building up our community materials on this. We'll be developing the web resources because we know that, again, we've got lots of information out there. It's not firmly put forward. And we're organising at least one face-to-face meeting in September, probably in collaboration with all the other community of interests as well. So it's not just us. I mean, the little group here, Jim Smith, who's here, and I think most of my other co-chairs are all here. But we've got partners in the other communities of interest. There's quite a lot of interaction between people here. The TR Evolution project, which involves developments to SACRO, SACRO ML, and to the SATRA project, which has quite a long, they all have quite solid links, and so there'll be a lot of overlap between those programs going on here. And we're thinking more broadly about data services, not just TREs. There are different types of secure environment like Open Safety or Data Shield, but also, this is a problem for organizations that don't have a TRE, but just allow people to take away data and use it, how we should be providing information to people about using confidential data more safely. And lastly, we have quite a wide range of international partners who are quite well connected with other groups in other countries talking about this. So we're hopefully going to bring all of that together on here. And I think that's probably it. So if you want to join the SDC Reboot community, this is our email address, or send us an email and we'll put you in touch and think it on. We're not hard to find. That's it.
Thanks so much for that, Felix. Yeah, really clear. Do we have any questions for Felix or any of the other SDC Reboot community chairs? You kept well to time, Felix, so we do have a minute or so.
So kept to the colour scheme as well.
Yeah, we've gone for a bit of a brand revamp, so yeah, super important to keep on brand. I can't actually see the chat, so I don't know if anybody else can just keep an eye on that whilst I'm sharing my slides in terms of questions. But if we don't have any questions for Felix, then you know, if something comes up.
We'll send it to.
Oh, sent it.
Was that a question or? I think maybe it was someone's mic just came off mute for a second. Yeah, so any questions for Felix or SDC Reboot, do put it in the chat. Okay, so we will now move on to the UK TRE Community Management and Engagement Interest Group. I think it was Pete Barnsley.
Hi there, yeah.
Pete's online.
I am indeed. Thanks very much, Balint. Hi, everyone. I'm Pete Barnsley from the Francis Crick, and talking about the UK TRE community. It's co-chaired with Madeline and David and Simon. Down on the bottom left, you can see there. Thanks. Next slide. So what's this community all about? It started about 2 years ago, and at a conference, highly technical conference, on research software engineers, and emerged from that. And then a year later was already 100+ people, and had another conference. And then last year, we had a major conference looking at federation accelerating data science through community collaboration. And we were up to 320 people. And so who are all these people, and what do they get and do? So next click. The community, the members are all over the place. Just to give you a flavour, we have quite a lot of academic involvement, a couple of hundred people with about 60 organisations. But equally, we have quite a lot of public involvement with 17-ish members of the public engaged in some shape or form, looking and watching and being part of what we talk about. If you look at the other organisations, there is a wide diversity, but commercial organisations, quite a few, 30 or so, but a lot of organisations across the NHS, government and charity sectors, including some funders. And these people bring a whole variety of skills. Sorry, I'm not quite there yet, but operation skills. People operate these secure data environments, or the TREs. They also maybe manage it. We have engineers, both software and data engineers. We have people who are technologists and engineering and information governance people. We have people from the public, as I said before, but also people in the strategy and policy. And it's a wide collection of skills. It's a very open organisation. We want to support anyone who's want to speak and add and comment about UK TRE activities across that diverse set of needs. So yeah, next slide. So what do we get up to? We have organised 7 working groups within the community. One's looking at funding and sustainability. How do all of these TREs get funded and become sustainable? Citizens Agency is all about ensuring public have choice still in this infrastructure, all of the way we're developing these things for federation. And the SD TRE definitions is looking at how we differ, how those two things differ. And the extending control is technical tools to help information governance alongside the ones that Felix has just talked to, alongside a glossary, what do these words mean, against the Sartre specification that I think is coming later, and cybersecurity risks that are specific for TREs. Could you last click? So we have some events in December and January that looked at the public engagement and funding, and another click. Future events are in March. We've got one looking at information governance with the Information Governance Interest Group. And in June, some more on federation of funding and looking at potentially a deep dive. And then in September, joining with the other communities to run a large event so that we can bring ourselves all together. So hopefully that gives you a rounding of it. We're very open. Please next click. There's a variety of ways of getting in touch through our website, through the repositories on GitHub, if that's your inclination, through the mailing lists, through Slack, but also watch our recordings of what our events create on YouTube. So please come and join. We're a very open and friendly community. So look forward to seeing you whenever you like. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Pete. Yeah, whistle-stop tour of the UKTRE community. Do raise your hand if you have any questions off the back of that for Pete. Again, apologies, I can't see the chat, so if there's anything coming through on there that you can see, Pete, then do pick it up. Yeah,
Nothing. I can't see anyone obviously who've replied, Balint, on the chat meeting.
No worries. Perhaps something will come through in time. Again, Pete, thanks very much. You kept bang on time, so yeah, much appreciated. And yeah, lots of different ways to engage here, so hopefully that's useful. Okay, so next we'll have PEDRI, so Public Engagement and Data Research Initiative, the interest group. If Doreen is online, she actually mentioned she might be a bit late, so we may have to push this one. But Doreen, are you online?
Doreen's not online, but I'm happy to step in because I think she's running late, just so you can continue with the flow.
If you're happy to, Samira, that's fine.
Yeah,
But otherwise,
happy to
I don't mind, skipping for now.
Yeah, I'll step in just in case she's a little later than expected. So hi everyone, I'm Smira Khan. I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager for PEDRI and Operational Lead for the Public Engagement Data Research Initiative. Next slide, please, Balint. So what is PEDRI about? As Balint mentioned in his introduction, PEDRI exists to support the embedding of public perspectives in decisions made with public data, from data-driven research and policy making to organisations and systems that hold and regulate the sharing and use of public data. So we have 5 different objectives around PEDRI, and if you could just click for me, Balint, just keep clicking until we finish for this slide, because I think there's a few clicks. Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So these are our 5 strategic objectives, and the first one is around collaboration and partnership, and this is about working with partnership organisations within data and statistics to kind of avoid duplication of effort and work collaboratively on sharing learnings to strengthen the quality of outcomes for patient and public involvement. We have an objective on good practices as well, and this is about embedding good practice guidance for PPIE across that are specific and set fit for purpose for those working in data and research and statistics as well. And this ensures that we're working in the field or new to PIE and data statistics have a clear framework to follow, leading to more effective and meaningful PPIE. Our next objective is around two-way engagement and communication, and this is around kind of the deliberative efforts as well. So actually speaking to the public, listening, understanding, and considering how we can collectively as a partnership work and act on their concerns as well. We also have an objective around learning and development. And this is about addressing resource and information gaps for researchers and practitioners. So when it comes to proactively working, what are the resource gaps and how can we support the community? And we've done quite a lot of work to understand those as well. And then culture of patient and public involvement. This is what we ultimately want to create through PEDRI. We want to create a culture of involvement and engagement in data and statistics. So organisations are finding it easier to be able to embed PPIE into the work that they're doing. And you can see here, equality and diversity and inclusion is something that we embed throughout everything that we do. And we've recently been having discussions with our public advisory group about that kind of virtuous cycle of where involving the public can ultimately lead to more opt-ins and how we can build trust with the public. And there's a quote here from one of our public contributors around the fact that it's not about getting people to trust you, but it's actually about demonstrating trustworthiness. And one thing we've learned through PEDRI is that it's extremely difficult to build trust on an individual level, but actually demonstrating trustworthiness is essential. And I think part of the partnership for PEDRI is about doing that and being able to build trust with the public as well. Next slide, please, Balint. And then just in terms of our key achievements, I won't go through everything, but we've just to give you a snapshot, we started with 3 founding members back in 2022 since inception of PEDRI, and we now have 20 partner organisations. So we've grown significantly. And in our first phase for PEDRI, we built a partnership and precedents for collaborative working in the field. We developed the good practice standards, and I'll be talking a little bit more about what we've done in that area for the working group that I'll be talking about. We've tried to understand the community needs and the requirements for learning and development, and we've created a resource hub to be able to support researchers and communities. And then we also delivered a pilot communications campaign which focused on families as well. And then delivering a programme of community activities is also been key as part of phase 1 of PEDRI. And then phase 2 has been very much about strategic expansion and community development. So we're looking at how we can work better with the commercial sector, looking at how we can work better with industry, and trying to explore different ways of working and expanding our strategic partnership. We've done quite a lot of work. We've been on a journey with the good practice standards, which actually started as the best practice standards. And through consultation, we were told that actually, you know, there's always room for improvement. So we changed them to the good practice standards, and there's a lot of more work to be done there. Website, we now have a new established website and a resource hub, which is your kind of one-stop shop for resources when it comes to involvement and engagement in data and statistics. And thought leadership and a community approach is the next kind of stage for PEDRI, and developing resources, learning and knowledge sharing events as well is kind of key for the next steps. And also a key thing for PEDRI now is really thinking about solidifying our position as a thought leader, but ensuring future sustainability as well. And so that's just a snapshot of some of the things that we've delivered over the last year or so, but very happy to take any questions. And of course, please do follow us on LinkedIn, and we also have our PEDRI bulletin as well. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And if Doreen's joined, I hope I've done your slide justice.
That was all very clear. Thank you for that, Samira. I know you're talking again for the working group, so thanks so much for stepping in there. Any questions from anybody in the room? Do put your hand up. I've actually got one, Samira. If I can take chair's privilege. I guess a bit like their UK, PEDRI is a sort of it's sort of data agnostic, or you think about different kinds of data. I was wondering if you have any reflections from a sort of public engagement perspective about the similarities and differences in having conversation about different kinds of data, also within the context of growing capabilities with AI. Are there sort of what's the key kind of challenge that you have, or what have you learned from having these sort of cross interdisciplinary kind of conversations?
Yeah, no, really great question, Balint. I think the first thing that we've learned is that it's extremely useful to have this platform where you can share best practice and collaborate as a partnership, because we are data agnostic, as you said, and we look at health and non-health data. And one of the things that we have learned is that the health data setting is a lot more established than non-health data when it comes to public involvement and engagement. And there's a lot more work to do in the non-health sector. But the fact that we have this platform set up to kind of explore that with our partners is absolutely key, I think, as well. So working collaboratively, learning from best practice that's already been done in the health sector, I think will really help us in terms of moving forward with the non-health sector as well. And recently we have onboarded some new partners as well within the non-health sector. So we're really excited about that partnership and kind of learning from them and unpicking as well. So yes, challenging but exciting.
Thanks, Samira. If anybody's got any questions, do raise your hands or put it in the chat. Again, apologies, I can't see the chat, but if can pick up anything that comes in there. Otherwise, thank you very much for that, Samira. That was really clear. We'll move on to the next talk. This is on UK Health Data Research Alliance. I think if there was going to be time, we might come back to the Alliance. But if not, we'll otherwise invite the Information Governance Interest Group, which is part of the UK TRE community as well. Oh, we've got a hand from Angie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentations. I'm new to all of this, but I'm equally fascinated. So just a quick brief, I represent Project Salama, which is a domestic abuse charity. And my question is, I've seen, although very little, logos of cancer research and kind of other sort of charities. So my question is, how can we get involved? Is it through public engagement channel or through partnering with PEDRI?
Hi, yes, really good question. So on my slides then I have some contact information that you'll be able to get in touch with us. So we have if you go onto our website, we have a link of how you can contact us. And if you just complete that, we will be in touch and we can set up a meeting and have a chat about how you can be more involved across PEDRI. But yeah, really keen to work with you. So please do fill in that form. That'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if we could drop a link to that in the chat, if that's not already been done, then that would be wonderful. Thanks for the question, Angie. Do we have any others before we move on to the Information Governance Interest Group? If not, then I'm not sure which co-chair. Perhaps it's Kate, or perhaps it's someone else. Do we have someone?
You're very lucky to have me today, Balin. So hi everyone, I am Kate O'Sullivan, one of the co-chairs for the Information Governance Interest Group. If you can just move one slide ahead, please. And I'm very lucky to be co-leading this group with Amy, Felix, Pete, and Yvonne, who is our member of the public. Next slide, please. So I asked ChatGPT what sort of researchers' experience of information governance was, and this is the image it created for me. And I thought that this was a really great example of why we're so keen to have an information governance interest group. So what ChatGPT kind of drew for me is this incredibly kind of lock and key, very secure kind of shield with lots of legal components, but also this kind of frustrated person trying to figure out what information governance is. And this is very much one of the reasons that we came together to create this group, and the community outpouring that we had from those individuals already working in TREs was sort of a real kind of impetus for us to form this group. So we very much recognize that information governance, so that's around security, legal and ethical requirements, information governance, etc., very much it needs to be driven by consistent and clear terminology, decision-making, etc., that can enable sensitive data research whilst maintaining the public's privacy and confidentiality. And we know that clear information governance promotes legal and ethical compliance, it promotes openness and transparency, and it helps to maintain public trust. However, for researchers, there is oftentimes a perception of inconsistency in decision-making, and it's largely because decision-making is made on an organization by organization basis, but also can come down to individuals making specific decisions. And that can lead to frustration when there is a perception of inconsistency across organizations or across different types of scenarios or similar scenarios. So what we very much feel that needs to kind of happen is a kind of coming together of those of us that are in information governance within trusted research environments, but also across multiple organizations to look at best practice. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So our aims and deliverables are very much focused on putting policy into practice. So we know that there are lots of groups out there that are creating policy, that are creating best or guidance and frameworks, but unless you're kind of tied into those groups, you may not necessarily know the information that's being circulated. So one of our main goals here is to put together an index of all information governance groups across disciplines, and updating that and requiring it, cataloging it by discipline, but also to recognize the dependencies that those groups and the policies and guidance and frameworks they put out have on trusted research environments. We are aiming to create and maintain an inventory of the information governance, guidance, and regulations that come out, particularly when they impact trusted research environments. So we're looking to create a kind of single source of truth for people working in TREs so that they have access to this information in an open source format. We are also keen to identify good practice within the group. So many of us have been doing this for quite a long period of time, have incredible basis for the kind of policies and procedures that we actually implement. And so our group is aiming to be that kind of dissemination of good practice. So organizations don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can look to what's already been done. And where things haven't been done, we are looking to kind of create SOPs or procedures for how we can incorporate in new legislation into working practices. So our main goals here are to become that kind of community for information governance experts, and for those people that are new to this area. So we plan to have monthly meetings. We hope that the community will kind of drive our topics around some small focus sessions. We're looking to incorporate kind of PIE activities into that. So where we're putting together new policies, we'd like to work with members of the public in creating and framing those policies. And as a number of other people have said, we're looking to have quite a large kind of conference, sort of September time, with other groups where we can actually showcase some of our good practice across the TRE space. And then some of the initial ideas from people across the community around some of the specific things that we could focus on are a code of practice or a risk management framework, skills and competency frameworks, and then enabling IG in TREs. So where we move from like this idea of no to this idea of yes. If you want to move forward, please. You can join our mailing list. So we are a new group. We don't have our repositories or our index yet, but we will. And we have our first event online. So we're doing a takeover of the TRE community sort of meeting in March. And so it will be information governance themed. And I'll pop those in the chat. So happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Again, thanks for keeping to time as well. And yeah, super looking forward to that event. That's quite soon. Yeah, end of March. Any questions for Kate? Do raise your hands. Oh, I can see a raised hand. Fire.
Hello. Yes. Yeah. Hello. Hi, I'm Claire Masova. I work at HDR UK in the EDI role. So I didn't know which person to ask this question, but I think it fits with information governance. So I'm trying to get my head around the kind of how the ethical fits in with trusted research environments. So as I'm kind of familiar with the process for individual research projects where people will consent, and then there's obviously a push to put for research data to be uploaded into data repositories, that kind of thing, and participants asked to consent to that. I'm just trying to get my head around how does that work for like already existing data sets. I don't know if that question makes sense at all.
I think it absolutely makes sense. And I think that this is one of the reasons that we're really trying to create this group to kind of say, there are people in our community that are absolutely experts in this area, experts around consented data, experts around unconsented data for use in research. And it's very much one of the things that we want to kind of showcase where there is a specific question that we can ask the group and how members of the group handle this, etc. There are obviously ethical and kind of legal policies that govern how we do things, but the kind of written on a page versus how people do this in practice is, I think, one of the things that we're really kind of keen to be able to support people on. So,
okay.
I would very much encourage you, if you want to join our mailing list and then pop that question into the group. We're very much about kind of crowdsourcing the ways that other organizations have managed this, and also to kind of avoid this very much that kind of siloed decision making that you're talking about there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doreen, I can see you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, no, just great to hear that you plan to do some mapping to find out what other groups are doing and how you can link to them. I think belonging to two groups that might be of relevance. I know that there's a lot of crossover in terms of membership between the TRE community and, for example, the UK Health Data Research Alliance, which has a pan-UK data governance group. And I know that there are mutual interests that could be explored. So I think maybe just raising the heads up that we would be very interested in working with yourselves.
That's wonderful.
We have Pete, for example.
And you were,
Yeah.
that was one of the Pan UK Data Governance Group was one of the ones that we showcased sort of in our community charter and things like that, because there already are very well established groups out there making policy, making guidance. And then it's, we're very much keen to kind of say, well, if there is a policy or guidance, how have people implemented this? And kind of really bring together that diversity of policy, guidance, frameworks, and then translating that into practice.
Yeah, no, that's kind of exactly what I was going to say as well about the linkage between practice and the policy. And so, yeah, that's great that you have that in hand.
Thank you.
Brill. Well, thank you, Kate, and thank you for fielding those questions as well. Okay, we've got another new interest group next, which is the Best Practice for Research Imaging, which is the wonderful BESTIES acronym. Claire, are you going to take us through this one?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Balint. So yeah, I'm Claire MacDonald, and I'm going to be taking you very briefly through our rather interestingly named Research Images Retrieval Group. So we applied to fund this group really as a result of our own imaging pipeline build and some questions that we started developing while we were doing that. So there are a range of different methods for this around the country, ranging from open source retrieval to sort of black box commercial offerings. And the kind of academic or NHS or commercial part is not really the issue, because they surface similar things, but the issues are more around what you do with that information. How do you physically get it to where you need it to go? What's the best way of doing that? Storage and retrieval, automation, all those kind of things. But also more practical things around what you do with that information and those images once you've got them. So I'm just going to, we do have a sign up form. I'm just going to, or I can't put it in the chat, sorry. I'm not allowed to send messages in the chat. If somebody could copy that in for me, that'd be great. If you want to move on to the next slide, please. But we do have a sign up group online where you can sign up to get information on our workshops and events and things like that, and any kind of mailings that we're going to be doing. So we're going to be focusing on trying to understand within the group and the community what are the topics around this that people want to most focus on first. So around things like quality of the images. So not all images are equal. Do we want to be able to, for example, grade the images for quality and say to people, we have X amount of A grade, B grade, C grade images. Which would you prefer? Do you want all of them or only the A grade? That sort of thing. The accuracy of the retrieval, we have noticed, and this will be a problem in some areas more than others, but there may be an issue with getting exactly the image that you've requested from your retrieval. We have workarounds for that where we are, but it may be more of an issue for other people. So what's the best way to mitigate that, particularly when people are using different methodologies for retrieval? And that comes into precision as well, making sure that we've got exactly what we need, what we've asked for. Are we going to be able, for example, to cut out the human element of a search and retrieve exactly the slice we want? rather than just a full set of images. So those are the sorts of topics that we might introduce for discussion. And then what we're hoping to do is sort of focus on one main topic for the first year. We'll have monthly meetings online, but we're hoping to have a face-to-face one as well, where we decide on the topic we'll focus on to then produce best practice recommendations, hopefully by the end of the sort of funding year. And this can be not just radiology, as I've kind of demonstrated there. It could be ophthalmology packs, it could be digital pathology images. In our imaging pipeline, we have all of these. I know some pipelines focus on only one type. So these are all kind of things that the community will decide as a group together. We will be promoting the group in several channels that we already have available, and we will be asking public members from different existing groups and work streams as well if they're interested to join, and they will be part of all the workshops in the same way as any academic, NHS or industry person would be. So they'll be integrated into the whole process, and it's not a separate process when we're looking at public involvement and engagement in the group. And we might, towards the end of this sort of year, look at, can we develop working groups out of this now that we've kind of decided what we're going to focus on, any kind of focus areas for the future? Will we be able to develop specific working groups to tackle those more discrete subjects as we go? And if you want to move on to the last slide, please. That's the co-chairs there, and we've got the front sort of window there for the sign up group page. So if anybody wants to join and get involved in the discussions, I know there's 2 other members of the group at least are on today as well. I've noticed them in the people list on the meeting, but I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thanks so much for that, Claire. Great, and yeah, I'm sure we can try and get that link for the form to get in touch or to join the community into the chat. Any questions for Claire on best practice for research images interest group? Just raise your hand, or indeed pop it in the chat, and we can catch it. But if not, do put things in the chat if things come to you. Otherwise, just thank you again for that, Claire. That was very clear. And we'll move on to the standardized architecture for trusted research environments. So this is the SARTRA interest group. So I think, is this Simon? Are you going to take us through this one? Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simon Lee. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Standard Architecture for Trusted Research Environments interest group. So the main reason this intergroup came about is that, for anyone who doesn't know, in the UK, trusted research environments, or SD, secure data environments, have been developed organically over the past 10 to 15 years. But there's now a real need for standardization, and SARTRA is one of those standards that we've been building. So you can see in the top left, we've got a website, sartra.ukta.org. If you want to find out more about us or get some detailed links, go there. What are we doing in this interest group? So roughly about 2 years ago, we first came up with this standard. It saw a lot of take up across the UK. One of the reasons for that is we're very strict about following a community first or community driven model. So it wasn't us saying this is what we think it should be. We did a lot of outreach across the community and stakeholders to build the standard. So it's had take up across the UK, Europe, and almost internationally. But we're now at the stage where we need to start formalising what we've got. So we do have a specification, but what we don't yet have is a long-term governance and sustainable model. So by governance, I mean like who actually oversees SARTRA, who says this change has community support, that sort of thing. And then closely related to that is the idea of achieving formal accreditation. So a lot of the past workshops or the communities really asked for like how to say, well, I've said how we can, we've got SARTRA, we can evaluate ourselves against SARTRA, but how do we make this standard have teeth, so that it has a real meaning that people take note of? That's one of the things we're going to be looking at as an interest group along with governance. And the third thing would be just the long-term maintenance of SARTRA. So we know there's still more additions that need to be made. You might have heard from some of the other presentations, there's this big DARE project called Trevolution that's seeking to bring federation. That's going to have a lot of input into SATRA. But again, just to emphasize, just because it's a Trevolutionist DARE project, that doesn't mean they get to dictate what SATRA is. It still needs community assent. And that's one of the things we're very strict about. So who benefits from all this? Well, I've said one of the reasons behind SATRA is to start standardizing TOEs that have developed organically. And like the first reason ultimately is, if you remember the public, is so you can start understanding better like how the data is being used. So a lot of TOEs hold public data. They obviously hold them securely, but as a public, you have the right to know like how they're actually having the data. And if every TOEs are different, that's really difficult. In SATRA, we have some like public interest requirements, just saying around transparency and openness. So, for example, you know that if a TOE complies with SATRA, they comply with a baseline of public requirements. And it also means that if you do want to delve further into a particular TOE, for example, that's been a lot easier because it does follow standard architecture. If you're an operator or developer of a TOE, again, just having a standard there means instead of having to like create everything from scratch or figure everything out yourselves, you've now got a sort of fairly standard template you can go to. And this is the sort of open source model you may be familiar with. Rather than everyone doing their own thing, you can reuse sort of technology or code or ideas or patterns that people have already created. And finally, if you're a user researching a TOE, rather than having to like figure out how to use every TOE independently, if there's a standard architecture, over time, you'll hopefully find it a lot easier to use. So how should you get involved? Well, the best way is to join something called the Collaboration Cafe. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially an informal sort of online event that's open to everyone, and I really do mean everyone, including the public. The general idea is that you know everyone, whether they work a technical person, information governance, member of the public, can have a conversation together in the same place about what SATRA is. In general, these collaboration cafes will be themed around a general idea. For example, it might be information governance. But as I say, they're very informal. We have breakout rooms. So in addition to the general theme, there's usually space to talk about pretty much anything you want. We're just setting up the dates of those at the moment. They'll be roughly monthly or 2 weekly. And our recommendation to get involved is actually to go through one of the existing community groups. So because SATRA has such a widespread audience, it makes sense to like partner with say groups like UK TOE or Secured Safe Data Access Professionals, who we'll hear from later. So get involved with them, join the mailing list. We'll advertise all collaboration cafes on there. We'll also advertise or mention any sort of major changes or things of note to SATRA. And if you do want to get involved more deeply, say you can go to our website. I've just pasted a link. There's just a bit more technical resources, things like a GitHub repository, which is where we like collaborate on the formal standard and so on. So thanks. I think that's everything.
Brilliant, thank you, Simon, and all done just a single slide. So well done for that. Any questions at all for Simon? You put your hands up. I should also say, and I was going to mention this at the end, actually, that we've also got our DARE UK community groups hub. So hopefully, when those dates for the collaboration cafes are available, then you'll be able to find information about it there. So there's quite a few different avenues, hopefully, through which you can get information about what the different community groups are doing. Okay. If there's nothing in the chat and no raised hands, then we'll move on to a group that Simon's just mentioned, actually, the Secure Data Access Professionals group. So, Leigh, are you around?
I am. Hello, everyone. My name's
Wonderful.
Leigh Tate, and I am the Data Access Services Manager at the UK Data Service. I'm in a temporary role currently, so I have to remember the right title. So I want to talk to you about the OG of Networks, which is the Safe Data Access Professionals group. We have been in place since 2011, and it was originally set up as an informal network of data specialists, really like-minded souls and so forth. The UK Data Service took ownership in 2021. And so next slide, please. I've always wanted to say that. And so the co-chairs are currently the coolest man in Britain, who is not with us today, and myself. And we also have a steering group that sort of helps us direct our activities, and that has got a whole host of different memberships in there. We've got people from Public Health Scotland, University of Edinburgh, Health Foundation, and so forth. And they say we meet informally to set our activities. And also, as Simon has alluded to, we work very closely with UK TRE just to make sure there's alignment in our activities, and that we tend to have a very close programme of our meetings and our input. So if we make sure that we're not telling you all the same thing twice, so that works very well. Next slide, please. So the purpose of our group is to facilitate the sharing of expertise, good practice and knowledge between those working in TRE. So it really is, rather than being having a particular focus, it's a place where people can ask questions, speak to colleagues and use it as a sounding board for getting ideas and things like that. And its specific point is to support collaboration, and it's intended that in collaborating we'll be able to drive forward innovation and service development, not just for the UK data archive, but across the whole landscape. Next slide, please. So our members, currently we have membership from over 40 organisations, and largely it represents the day-to-day management or administration of a safe data setting. And as I said before, and at the risk of replicating, so I'll skip over this, we do work in collaboration with other data community networks and interest groups, as others have added. Next slide, please. So with regard to our events and resources, we do quarterly online events. The next one is actually on Tuesday. So what we've got this time round is, to give you a little brief overview, it's a discussion-based agenda this time. We're looking at rather than presenting what we're doing, it's about getting ideas of other people, and we're looking at adding software to a safe setting. And another thing which escapes my mind, and it will pop back in my head just when we're finished, but I can link the agenda, and anybody who wants to come along, do please feel free. So we also have a suite of online resources, so things such as the Statistical Disclosure Control Handbook, which is not easy to say, a competency framework which we devised for staff working in a safe setting, and we're currently as a group working with HDR UK on a digital infrastructure skills bid. We are the communication channel for that. So I think where a lot of other groups are specifically set up to look at a sort of narrow perspective, no insult intended there, we are anything goes. So anything that you want to obviously to do with data that you want assistance with, or you'd like some opinion or resources, we can assist with that. So ours is a lot more of a sort of I don't know what word to use, open-ended group. So next slide, please. And that's me. Oh, there was another slide there. I don't know where it's been cut off. There was a QR code that you could link to join, but what I'll do is I'll pop it in the group instead. And if any of you have got any questions or would like to join, please do let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies for that, Lee.
That's okay.
It's possible that I made an error.
I was proud of the QR code as well.
We'll make sure it's included in a deck that gets sent out as well. So yeah, apologies for that.
No problem. Thank you,
Lee. Brilliant, yeah, and thank you for that overview. You know, SDAP's a very, very long-standing community, as you mentioned, so we're thrilled to have you on board and connect, hopefully, you with some of the other things that are going on. Any questions for Lee at all? do put your hands up. If not, then I think this might be the last of the interest group presentations from this time from the International Secure Data Facility Professionals Network. So yeah, we're really thrilled to have endorsed this group recently. So is it Beata or Sharon?
Yeah, that's right. That's Beate. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Beate Lichtwart, and I'm a co-chair of the International Secure Data Facility Professionals Network, ISDFPN. So what is ISDFPN? It's basically a network that brings together international colleagues working in or towards setting up secure data facilities to share expertise and experiences, discuss relevant areas of work, and to spark collaborations as well as develop new ideas. So we are open to different disciplines, including social sciences, health and humanities. And we are actually quite unique in that we are discussing issues not only in relation to quantitative secure data, but also options for making qualitative secure data available in the future. Next slide, please. So what is the story? How did ISDFPN come about? The story is the following. So there was a Pathfinder project in 2018 called Iran, and that led to a Horizon 2020 funded project application where we were successful, and the project, the Social Sciences and Humanities Open Cloud, SHOC, ran from 2019 until 2022. There were a few deliverables as an outcome, and I have listed some of them here. So when the slides are distributed, you can click on them and you will see them. I just would like to highlight 3 of those. One is the framework and contract for international data use agreements on remote access to confidential data. That's the D59. Then we have the 10, is a white paper on remote access to sensitive data in the social sciences and humanities. And finally, I would like to highlight the ISDFPN network. So basically, it was founded in 2022. And the issue, as you can see here now, the project SHOC ended in 2022. So what now? The UK Data Service and GISIS took ISDFPN forward and developed the network outside of that project and following that project. And it was co-chaired by myself for the UK Data Service and my then co-chair, Deborah Wiltshire from GISIS, Germany. And we have now been endorsed as a DARE UK interest group, for which we are very grateful. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So here, just to mention some of our events that we have run since we founded ourselves in 2022. Usually we run 2 online events per year. We have increased that now from this year onwards to 3 events per year. We have usually 2 talks per event, so at least, and you can see some of the presentations listed here on that slide. Our next event will be on the 5th of March, and if you would like to participate, please get in touch. Our email address is isdfpn@ukdataservice.ac.uk. So the topic for the next event will be RDCnet Connecting Secure Workplaces for Research. That's an initiative in Germany, and we will contrast that to the TRE Federation architecture, and to be very precise here, version 2.2, so that some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we will basically contrast 2 different approaches of federating the various RDCs, TREs, secure data facilities, however they are called in the different countries, and to basically look at different approaches to federate, which is so important in order to achieve interoperability between all these mushrooming secure data facilities, where there is no talking in between at the moment and no interoperability as such. And also there is this international project, EOSC and Trust, for example, which on a different level looks into federating internationally and setting a framework for that in the future. Next slide, please. And here just a few facts. So we have at the moment 30 individual members from 20 organizations across 9 countries. We have an ISDFPN Zenodo community space where we put our event presentations so our presenters can also get in DOI, and we have basically like something like a resource hub. We also add other resources to that, and we present on ISDFPN and publish. So the latest was at the World Conference for Qualitative Research just 2 weeks ago, where we discussed qualitative data in TREs. Is it an option? What are the issues? How could they overcome? And just to illustrate the interest that we receive, I have put a little graph here in the middle of that slide, web views by country. And you can see that we have actually received views from 34 countries, ranging from Zambia over Japan, Dominican Republic, Belgium, and Argentina. So that's actually quite impressive. And so there is lots of interest, and I'm actually very much looking forward to collaborating also with the other groups here. And we are already actually in touch and also on different various projects. So thank you very much. Please get in touch if you would like to join ISDFPN, offer a talk, or request more information. Our email address is isdfpn@ukdataservice.ac.uk.
Thank you, Beata. Great. And yeah, we're really thrilled to be able to bring in international perspectives as well within the sort of Dare UK program, which has certainly had, more of a UK focus. But yeah, great figure as well. Interesting to see how this model of trusted research environments is really not just the kind of direction of travel here, but also internationally. So like you say, federating across these different systems becomes more and more important. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Beata. Do we have any questions? I thought I saw a hand go up, but maybe it went up and down. If not, then I'll just again thank you again, Beata. And now that brings us to the end of all of the interest group lightning talks, actually. So now we'll hear from 2 working groups. So these are actually both of these working groups have been funded, so they're just about to kick off. So first we'll hear from the synthetic data working group, which I think Lewis is going to present for us.
Thanks. So our community group was put together to be able to establish governance standards and tools for the use of synthetic data within trusted research environments. So next slide, please. So we have a number of co-chairs with different experiences representing many different organisations. We really wanted to create a wide-ranging collaboration to be able to build consensus in this area. And many of these co-chairs are actively working on synthetic data and the governance around that. Next slide. And so several co-chairs have already established synthetic data working groups or projects which have looked at the challenges and perspectives of different aspects of synthetic data. So with our community group, we will collaborate with these groups to be able to build upon existing work, to be able to develop the solutions and eventually a governance framework for both low to high medium fidelity synthetic data. Next slide. Now, there's lots of different use cases of synthetic data within trusted research environments, all with varying levels of different requirements. So within DeepUK and the wider SERP tenancies, we're currently developing synthetic data TREs, essentially synthetic versions of our trusted research environments with lower governance and access controls. So this is really useful for things like researcher training, where access is difficult, or for developing workflows while researchers wait for data. And we're also aiming to use it in federation with ADDI so that researchers can write their queries on synthetic data versions as they can't see the real data. Next slide. And there's also a need for synthetic data across their UK projects. So from their AI risk group, it was identified that differentially private synthetic data could offer promising solutions for training and releasing privacy-preserving AI models. Then there's federation, where synthetic data would be beneficial to write queries where researchers don't have access to the real data. And as well, synthetic data for training is going to be really important for lots of different aspects. Next slide. But with each of these types of synthetic data, they have very different use cases and require very different properties. And they all have their complexities and challenges. And so we have to think carefully about how we evaluate these and create these synthetic data sets. Next slide. So the aim of this group is to host a series of workshops to come up with the solutions for the practical deployment of synthetic data in TREs. So we also want to develop best practices for the evaluation of things like quality, utility, and privacy, develop community tools for the generation and evaluation of different types of synthetic data, and create learning resources for different types of people to understand synthetic data and its uses, and how we can ensure that there's transparency and effective communication in synthetic data and what the risks are in that. Next slide. So our first workshop will be in April, and that will be with researchers to understand what the user requirements are for different levels of synthetic data. Then we'll have a workshop in June with experts to discuss best practices for generating and evaluating synthetic data. We'll have a workshop in August with data owners to discuss how we can make the process transparent and ensure that data owners can make effective and informed decisions when it comes to releasing synthetic data from trusted research environments. And finally, we'll have a workshop in October with the public to gather their feedback from the previous workshops' outputs and on the overall governance framework that we develop. Next slide. We've also been actively working on developing an open source Python package for the TRE community to be able to generate and evaluate synthetic data at lots of different fidelity levels for different use cases. So with this group, we will be incorporating feedback from the workshops to develop this tool further. So from the end of our workshops, we'll have an open source Python package specifically developed for the TRE community. Next slide. We'll also be building upon our work on transparency reporting and automated generation of reports from synthetic data to ensure that we can effectively communicate things like quality and privacy to data owners and researchers to make informed decisions with the use and release of synthetic data. So we'll build on this to make sure that we can communicate synthetic data effectively to different groups. Next slide. So from each of these workshops, we'll put together a report and incorporate feedback into our tool. And at the end of all of this, we'll put together a final report detailing a governance framework for trusted research environments for generating, evaluating, and releasing synthetic data in sensitive research datasets. Next slide. So I'll just finish by advertising two of our upcoming workshops. So we have our researcher workshop in Bristol on the 9th of April. Registration is now open if you head to our website. I'll put the link to that in the chat. And we can cover travel expenses for that. And we'll also be having an online workshop on the 2nd and 3rd of April in collaboration with the Daemon Network, where we'll be going through techniques to be able to generate and evaluate synthetic data for research purposes. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Lewis. Yeah, lots and lots going on. Any questions at all to raise your hand? I've got one actually. There's obviously you described a lot of different things that are going on. I wondered, you mentioned that there's a development of a tool for generating synthetic data that also wraps up some evaluation of the synthetic data that's generated by that tool. I was wondering, just kind of more generally, I don't know whether you can even answer this question now, but what for you, to what extent is the group going to be about bringing together things that have sort of already exist in the world and putting them together into something coherent versus identifying things that actually need to be done? I suppose I'm thinking here maybe about the governance framework.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of to what extent is this about sort of bringing together things that have already are out there in the world, and to what extent is it going to involve creating new things?
So, of course, synthetic data, there's many different aspects to it. You have the lower end of synthetic data for things like developing workflows. Then at the higher end, you have things for like researcher training or training AI models. So lots of different use cases. And there's already been a lot of work done for these different things and identifying the challenges and perspectives of these. So it's kind of tying it all together into one framework and actually developing the solutions. So we know what the challenges are. The next step is how do we overcome those challenges and develop the solutions to actually enable this within trusted research environments.
Thanks for that, Lewis. Wonderful. Well, if
Thank
we
you.
don't have any more questions for Lewis, then we'll move on actually to the last of our lightning talks for today. And I think it's you again, Samira. So this is on the PEDRI Good Practice Standards Evaluation and Adoption Working Group.
Thanks, Balint. Yes, hi everyone, me again. So yes, I'll be talking about the adoption and evaluation framework. Next slide, please. So one of the areas of work which I mentioned in the interest group has been around good practices, and over the last 2 years PEDRI has been working on developing good practice standards, and it's been quite a journey. So we started off with developing a draft version of the standards, and the initial version was about identifying the gaps and understanding what people actually needed in terms of the standards. So we did a thematic analysis and focus group discussions with representatives from the health data community to understand that. We then did some further consultations to look at the kind of validation and the relevance of the good practice standards, so to ensure that these actually resonated with many in the field and the community, and they would actually work in practice as well. We also wanted to look at the barriers and the facilitators to adopting the good practice standards and find strategies to overcome them as well. So we worked with data custodians, the health community, practitioners, PPIE leads to kind of understand those different barriers and facilitators. And you can see here on my slide that the final version of the standards, and this is reflected on our website, and we have a published more detailed version of the standards as well. So we developed this working group to now kind of focus on really optimizing the adoption of the good practice standards. And you can see here our partner organizations that are part of PEDRI. And to name a few that are part of the working group, so we have Administrative Data Research UK, Research Data Scotland, Health Data Research UK, and Cancer Research UK, and of course our public partners as well. And there's a few pictures there of us in action at a recent away day as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of our upcoming plans and what we're hoping to do, the first thing we want to do is manage and develop and support the implementation of an evaluation tool for the good practice standards. So it is about continuous improvement. It is an iterative process, and it is about learning from best practice and good practice as well. So this evaluation tool will provide a toolkit to be able to support organisations to kind of measure the effectiveness of the standards and capture qualitative and quantitative components to be able to understand that better. And so we will be focusing on that, and the group have already started working on a draft version. We then want to do some stakeholder consultations and workshops. So we'll work with the data community, we'll work with the public to really refine the tools and the framework that we develop to make sure it actually works in practice for organisations as well. And then we want to launch the Good Practice Standards funding call. And we know that one of the biggest challenges when it comes to patient involvement and engagement is resource allocation. So we want to make sure that there's some funding there available to organisations that are adopting the standards to utilise that funding and actually adopt the standards in practice as well. And then ultimately develop a report kind of providing an example of how they've embedded the good practice standards. And we'll start with our partner organisations and beyond as well. We're also looking into a frontier meeting for the good practice standards, and we want to engage executives and leaders in the field. So this will hopefully be in the summertime. And this is all about getting the good practice standards into organisations. And the ultimate aim of this is to make it easier for organisations to embed public involvement and engagement. So we want to learn from people. We want to understand what people are currently doing at the moment. And we're working with several different organisations to understand that as well. And then the final thing as part of this piece of work is around supporting exploration and the creation of an accreditation system for the good practice standards. So we really want to kind of rubber stamp in terms of the good practice standards. We want to make sure we get them right, and we want to explore developing an accreditation system which will work for organisations as well. So we'll look at the kind of costs attached, the legal side of things, etc. And that's part of this piece of work as well. And then my last slide, please. It's just to stay connected, and if you're really interested in being part of any stakeholder workshops or learning more about what this working group's up to, please do get in touch. All the contact details are there. And if you're not already, please do follow us on LinkedIn as well. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much again, Samira. Really clear. Any questions at all from the floor? I know it's been quite a long afternoon, but we've had a lot to listen to, so hopefully it's been useful. If there are no further questions for Samira, it really just leaves me to wrap up. And I really just want to say thank you to all of the community group co-chairs who have, come and given us a really succinct overview of the things that they're planning to do or are doing. I will be sending out the slides to in due course, and there will also be a recording of this. Do go onto our website and stay in touch with the Dare UK programme as well. I know there's lots of information about engaging with the different community groups, but we've just actually launched a community group hub as well, so hopefully that will also make it a bit easier to find all the information on the different community groups within a sort of centralized location, and we'll post the events that the different community groups will be hosting over the course of the next few months until the end of their UK phase 2. But again, thank you all for coming, and do stay in touch. I am happy to take any questions. I've stopped sharing, so at last I can see the chat. So brilliant. Thanks again all.